Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brianna and this is For Paws in a Book. I make book and lifestyle related content, so if that's something that you're interested in, make sure that you hit the subscribe button down below. Today we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of May. May was such a weird month in terms of how my reading went. I think I definitely was in a slump. I still managed to read 19 books, but I would say that like 7 of those happened during the weekend of Smut Den, and there were stretches of time where I did not finish anything. So I think it was only when I was doing a readathon or a challenge that I was actually, reading books. I read 5,579 pages during the month of May, which is my lowest reading month of the year. I don't know what it is about May, but I would really struggled to read some things. As far as quality, I had some really good books. I had 3 5-star reads, which is fantastic. I don't get that a lot, so happy for that. But as far as like reading statistics, I feel like this was a much lower month than it normally is. If you're new to my channel, first off, I'm going to talk about all of the statistics, all of the nerdy fun things. But if you are not interested in that, I will leave timestamps down below if I remember. Editing Brie, please remember. I'll have timestamps down below where I will start talking about the books, and I start from my least favorite up to my favorite book. I read 7 books via audiobook only. I read 4 books on ebook or Kindle. I read 2 books physically, and I read 6 with a mixture of audio and physical, audio, ebook, whatever. I read 14 novels and 5 novellas, most of those being right around Smut Den. I only had 2 books that were for a YA audience. I had 2 that were for a new adult audience and 15 that were for a adult audience. For my genres, I had 2 contemporary, 2 fantasy, 2 horror, 3 sci-fi, 1 thriller, and then obviously 9 romance. A lot of that coming from Smut Den. And then as far as ratings, I had 1 1-star, 2 2-star, 3 3-stars, 1 3.5 star, 5 4 stars, 4 4.5 stars, and 3 5 stars, like I said, with my average rating being a 3.71. I'm also going to be doing something a little bit different with my wrap-ups going forward. I used to do mid-month wrap-ups, but those got to be really hard because you could only do them like within a certain, couple of days before it's no longer the middle of the month. And if that happened to fall in the middle of the week when I don't have the ability to film, it just didn't get done. What I'm going to do instead is at my end of month wrap up, I will talk about every single book, but if I have a vlog about it, I will be very brief in my wrap up here, and then I will link you to the vlog that you can watch it. With that said, let's talk about the books. The first one, my 1-star read, was Waiting for Him by Tegan Wells. This was a little erotic novella that I read. It was the first book I read for Smut Den. I'm not going to go into much detail here, but this was, there's no plot. It was just like a little smutty scene, essentially. A smutty few scenes. My biggest problem with it is that it was in second person. And so, like, listening or reading a smut scene in second person is like peak secondhand embarrassment. Because you're like, it didn't work for me at all. There's very little I can say about this book. Like, it is about a, pre-established couple. It's a married couple, and she is waiting for him to come home, and then she narrates it. And that is all this book was. I had 2 2-star reads. The first one was also for Smut Den, and that was Get in My Swamp by G.M. Ferry. This is Shrek smut. Quite literally, the names are Leona and Beck. There is a donkey character that's like a centaur. She was married to, or she was engaged to Lord Farquaad. It's a whole thing. I was actually kind of having a good time with it until the end when where there was an assault scene that kind of came out of nowhere, and then also Jaime and Cersei, like the Jaime and Cersei trope that happened at the end, and I was not on board for that. So it got 2 stars, but it was a time. I read it in a couple of hours. It was very quick. It's fine. The second 2-star read that I had was Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut. This was a book that I read for the Can I Trust Taylor Swift, and I was reading some of her book recommendations. This one did not work for me. This one was very rambly. It was trying to be this dystopian, post-apocalyptic, New World Order type story, but it came off very misogynistic, very sexist, and because of that, I just never had a good time with it. I had 3 3-star reads, and they were all also for vlogs. The first one is The Princess and the Scoundrel by Beth Revis. I read this for the May the 4th Be With You Star Wars vlog. This one was my least favorite of all of them, and a lot of that stems from this was a grumpy sunshine, but like to the extreme. Han Solo was so grumpy. It didn't work for me because like he never had a reason for being as grumpy as he was, and then like he was mad at Leia for like doing her job and being a politician and being an ambassador and having to like go and talk to, you know, people on this planet, even though they were supposed to be like having a honeymoon or whatever. So for me, it just never like got off the ground. I think there were some interesting parts. I did really like the wedding scene that happened very early on in the book. So I liked that scene. And I think that if you are a Han and Leia like super stan, this is a great fan service, right? Like this is a great little added bonus for you to like see their relationship. But for me, it was just like very middle of the road. I also read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier for the Taylor Swift vlog. This is a book that heavily inspires one of the songs on the Evermore album, so I really wanted to read this one. This one intrigued me at the beginning. This is about a woman who is coming in as the second wife of this like esteemed person, and she's basically like seeing the ghost of the first wife. The writing style is really interesting. There is like, you never actually know who the main character is because she's the one narrating it, and so she's unnamed the entire time, which I think is a really cool like writing technique. But I do think that this book is too long. I think we got to these like really interesting points and then we kind of dragged the ending out a little bit too long. So because of that, I got bored and it was a 3-star. Lastly, I gave 3 stars to The Never King by Nikki St. Crow. I also read this one during Smut Den. I had high hopes for this one because listen, almost every single comment on my Smut Den pile of possibilities was like, The Never King is so good. The Never King is so good. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on The Never King. Here's the thing. After reading The Never King, I have 0 thoughts, 0 opinions. This book is the absolute definition of this is a book that exists and I read it, because I honestly couldn't tell you what was going on. I mean, it's a Peter Pan retelling, like smutty retelling, but like here's the thing, like these lost boys are like so entranced by her, blah blah blah, and it's like this girl is kidnapped and her first thought is, I'm gonna be able to get out of this if I just sleep with them. And then that's what she does. That wouldn't be my first thought if I was kidnapped, right? And like they were, you know, the Lost Boys are like, oh, we've never done this. We've never, you know, I've never slept with one of the Darling Girls and blah, blah, blah. And like, and then like just immediately jumps into bed with her with no reprieve, no like hesitation. Ma'am, you aren't that special. You aren't that special. Like 20 bucks says, this has happened before. So anyway, I don't have any thoughts about this. I don't have any opinions. This was fine. I'm not going to continue on with the series, and I'm going to unhaul this book. I somehow only ended up with one 3.5-star read, and that was A Blade So Black by L.L. McKinney. I briefly talked about it in my 24-hour challenge vlog that I'll link up above, but this is essentially Alice in Wonderland meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I think that if you like either of those, or you like kind of like a mix of those, also I think if you like Slay by Brittany Morris, I think you would like this. This is a very different look at a beloved like classic retelling. Our main character Alice finds this portal to Wonderland, essentially, but it's very much darker than Alice in Wonderland could ever think about being. It is like nightmares, and it definitely still follows the beats of Alice in Wonderland, and I could see what the author was doing, but trying to add in these social commentaries. Obviously, like she is a black teenager in America, and so she's dealing with that, and there was a lot of conversations with like her mom, because obviously like she can't get in contact with her mom while she's in Wonderland, and so her mom would call her tons and tons of times, not be able to get a hold of her, and got really upset because she couldn't get a hold of her because just a couple of weeks ago another girl was shot and killed in like their neighborhood. So I really see the importance of this. My biggest problem with this book definitely stems from the fact that it is just, there's a lot of like teenage drama in this, and that is what I struggled with. Her friends would get really mad at her because like she didn't show up to the party and things like that, and like I really liked it when we were in the Wonderland like portal universe, but I wasn't as much of a fan when they like went back to high school and like the teenage drama. This is a YA book though, like, so I can't really fault it for that, because it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. I'm just not the target audience for it anymore, and I need to know that, and I need to like stop picking up YA. I had 5 4-star reads. The first 2 I'm going to talk about were Smut Den reads. The first one was Six Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent. This is the novella that goes between Serpent the Wings of Night and Ashes of the Star-Cursed King. So it's like a little novella, and it was beautifully written. I wanted a full-length novel from this book. This is like a vampire romance, right? And it was beautiful. It's gorgeous. The writing is just top tier. Carissa's writing is beautiful, and I cannot wait to read more from her. I also have Serpent in this list that I'll talk about in a little bit, but it was beautiful. It was excellent. I cannot wait to read more. Also, I read Treble by Rilzy Adams, and this was a contemporary polyamorous like romance. It wasn't as dark as I thought it was going to be, but it's essentially about a married couple who have an open relationship. So they're both like looking for new partners separately, right? And so he meets this girl on a dating app, I think, and starts talking to her, and then the wife meets this girl in a coffee shop, and they start talking, and then through a series of events they actually find out that like the couple was talking to the same girl. So then they end up having this relationship with the 3 of them. It was very hot, very steamy, and I would have loved to see a full-length novel of this. I read Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney for the Taylor Swift vlog as well. This was my favorite of the 3 that I read, which is really kind of cool because I DNF'd Normal People several years ago, and so I was really afraid to go into this one, but I really, really enjoyed this one. This is essentially a thesis on millennial life. This is just about a woman trying to figure out her place in life, what she's doing with her life, and it really hit home. There was a scene about infertility and trying to get pregnant, and like someone sending this like offhanded comment of like, you're gonna be next, you're gonna be having a baby down the road, when she had just gotten this devastating news of like the fact that she may not ever get pregnant, and like this is the closest thing that a book has gotten to making me cry this year, because that was, you know, relatable. But anyways, this was a really, really nice surprise, and I'm really happy that I read it. Next up, we have American Love Story by Adriana Herrera. This is a male-male romance that is so cute, but then like also so steamy. This is about a man who is a professor and an activist, and he is trying to stand up and fight for the people that are getting pulled over, getting arrested, getting tickets for essentially driving while black, right? Like they're getting pulled over, they're getting searched because of the fact that they are black, and he meets up with an assistant district attorney. It turns out they actually had kind of like a thing several years ago, so it was kind of second chance, but not in a way where like they had done something wrong and so they were trying to get back together. It was just like, you know, we had a thing, it was fun, and we moved on with our life. So there was never a time where like I was like, well, I don't like you because you did that thing several years ago. It wasn't like that. So honestly, it was just really angsty, because it was like, oh yeah, I remember how he was in bed, that kind of thing. And like this was so steamy. There was a scene where they were on FaceTime, and like chef's kiss. But it was also really interesting because like they are on opposite sides of this fight, not on purpose. The ADA is not like actively trying to be like, oh, I'm not gonna, you know, take this case, but it was just like he was being handcuffed based on like what his boss was telling him he couldn't do. So that was a really interesting like moral kind of conflict that they had going on, along with this really fun romance. There was a lot of mental health rep in this as well. I really appreciate that. Highly, highly recommend this book. My last 4-star read was The Whispering Dead by Darcy Coates. This is the first book in the Gravekeeper series, and this is about a woman who ends up at a like cemetery / like church thing. Doesn't really know why she's there, what she's supposed to be doing. But it turns out she can see ghosts, so that's really fun, being around a cemetery and being able to see ghosts. And in this book, she is trying to essentially free a spirit. She is like having to basically solve the murder of the spirit so that it can like pass on to the next life, because it's kind of like stuck in that middle spirit world. And I really actually enjoyed this one. This book is the first in a trilogy, and I haven't continued on with the series yet, but I will. But I don't know, this one just felt really cozy. It felt low stakes. It actually, here's what it felt like. You know the book City of Ghosts and like that whole trilogy by V.E. Schwab, like her middle grade book? That book is, it's like Darcy Coates read that book and was like, what if we made this an adult novel? And that is what this became, because it's a very similar premise. Obviously, like, they're not going to different cities, like she's in this one cemetery, but like overall same kind of vibes, and I enjoyed it. I had a good time. Darcy Coates is one of those writers that, like, if you really enjoy prose, if you like the pretty writing, and you really like the characters, you'll get along with the book. But it's definitely a slower paced horror, but I think that's kind of what I like about it. Next up, we have our 4.5 star reads. The first one is Path of Deceit by Tessa Gratton and Justina Ireland. This book I also read for the Star Wars, like, May the 4th vlog. This one was my favorite in that vlog. This one really dealt with like the Force as a religion, and I was fascinated by that. The thing is that like religion in books, when it is a fictional religion, or one where the author can take creative liberty with, those are my favorite, okay, in any type of genre. And so this really hit all my buttons, because it was this like sect of people on this planet that didn't understand the Force, and so they created this entire religion because they were afraid of it. And that was just fascinating to me, and kind of a social commentary on some religions, yeah. Anyway, we're not gonna go there. If you want my full in-depth thoughts, I will link that blog up above. I also fell into the hype and read The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I, again, love Carissa's writing. It's beautiful. It's lyrical. There are some very quotable moments in this book. This is, like, at its core, it's a vampire romance, but there's so much more to it. There is this, like, competition happening, kind of like Hunger Games-esque, and it's very political. It's like the world and the politics and the backdrop, like that the story is set around, I think was my favorite part of this book. But even then I wanted more. I wanted like an understanding of why they were doing what they were doing. So I'm hoping that I get more of that in the second book. I'll definitely continue on with the series, but this is the first in a duology, like I said, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. It's not perfect. This book is such a slow burn. Like, they don't get together until like the 70% mark, but like, my God, when they do, they do. Let me tell ya. It's steamy, it's smutty, it's heavy. I enjoyed it. I'll definitely read more. I also, like, I did get the pretty hardcover editions, so like, we're living our best life here. Next up, I read The Last Word by Taylor Adams. This is Taylor Adams' third book, but I've only read 2 of them, and I've loved both of them. This one definitely has the same vibes of No Exit, so I think if you love that one, you'll like this one as well. I don't think this one was quite as strong as No Exit, but like, I mean, have you read No Exit? I don't think you can get much stronger than that. But this is about a woman who reads a terrible kind of KU book, and writes a 1-star review on Amazon. And then the author like emails her and is like, you need to take this down. You are messing with my livelihood, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. And then he starts like threatening her, and then like she thinks he's stalking her. It's a whole thing. It's very much an isolated setting because she is staying at someone's house. Like, she's like house sitting for somebody. It was a stressful book, let me tell you. This was an edge of the seat book. Like, I read it in 2 sittings. I mean, it's short, but like, I read it very quickly, and I was engaged the entire time. Lastly, the one that almost got 5 stars, and probably if it was dual POV, it would have gotten 5 stars, but that is Love at First Set by Jennifer Dugan. This is just awkward gaze. That is what it is. This is like a chaotic mess. This is about a woman who is invited to a wedding as a +1, and then she's in the bathroom during the rehearsal dinner, or like this, like one of the pre-dinners, and this woman is crying, and like, she doesn't know it's the bride because she's just a +1, and she's like, you don't need a man, like, you should break up with him, he doesn't sound good for you. And then like, she does, but like, it was the bride and groom. So, oops. And then, like, through a series of events, because like roommates can be meddling, they they start going out on dates and like they like each other, and it's so cute, and it's like just hella awkward, and I loved it. I loved this book. There was a lot of family dynamics in this book as well. Obviously, like, you know, with you like running away from your wedding, that kind of thing, kind of like draws up from some family drama. And then the main character does not have a great relationship with her mother, so like, hashtag relatable. But yeah, this book was so cute. So cute. Highly recommend. Moving on to my 5 stars, and I had 3 of them. 2 of them did happen during Smutden. The first one being Scarred by Emily McIntyre. This is the second book in the, like, what is it called? Never After series, I think. They're all like standalones, but they're all kind of like dark Disney retellings with smut. And this was a Lion King retelling, but when I say Lion King, it is like very loose, right? Like it's definitely more of a Hamlet retelling than anything else, but it was still very good. It was so political, and like again with the slow burn romance. I want to say like a good halfway into the book, she's still engaged to the other guy. So slowest of burns, but again has some great smut in it. Yeah, this one was so good. And then the book that like isn't I don't know how I feel about this one, but like Priest by Sierra Simone. 5 stars. Maybe on religious trauma, we don't know. This book is about a priest and a dancer, an adult dancer, and like she comes in for a confession, and in the confessional he's like having dirty thoughts, and then like they start, you know, he starts doing counseling for her, and then like, you know, it's so steamy. I mean, it's Sierra Simone, so you know that it's going to be, but like they use the oils, and like if you know anything about being Catholic, holy oils, like you know what those are for, like, you know, blessings and things like that, and like they use them during sex. It was so steamy. I'll definitely be continue on with the series. And lastly, what is a favorite book of the year so far? Like, it gets all of the stars, and that is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I started listening to this book on audio just because I needed a short audiobook during the 24-hour challenge, which I have linked above, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna listen to it on audio. I didn't actually want the physical copy of it because like it's not the prettiest cover in the world, right? And then I was like, oh my god, this book is amazing. I do in fact actually need a copy of this. So here we are. If you don't know what this is about a woman who has a friend. They are both authors. The main character, like her debut book did not really go over that well. Didn't get a paperback release, didn't hit all the accolades. Her friend, however, been on, you know, bestseller list, blah blah blah. She has a tragic accident and dies, and so then our main character takes the friend's manuscript of her next book and like edits it a little bit, like makes it polished, and then tries to sell it as her own book. And then there's like this backlash happening of being like, well, you know, first off, you're white, so why are you talking about Asian history? And like there is some serious conversations about publishing and like the dark side of publishing and like the tricks that they try to pull. It was a lot. But then there like are trolls online that are trying to say like, oh, you actually stole this. And it becomes this like psychological thriller almost, with a ton of social commentary. This book was fantastic. Absolutely amazing. All right, those are the books that I read in the month of May. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite book was, and I will talk to you down there. That is all I have for you today. If you're new here and you have not yet subscribed, there's a little button that you can do so down below the video. If you'd like to hang out with me more, the links to my Instagram, Goodreads, Twitter, and my Patreon are linked in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.